All right. So we'll go ahead and get started for today. So I'll just first introduce myself. My name is Mike Malakamati. I'm with the officially with the Banner Alzheimer's Institute, but I also work with the Banner Sun Health Research Institute with a longevity study. This webinar today really is going to serve a few different purposes. The first is really we want to, as a study group, take this opportunity to thank all of you for the many years of contributions and time that you've given to us, in our research endeavors. One thing that we were talking about as a group was kind of trying to figure out how we can, engage the participants of the longevity study a bit more. And one of the things that came up was that there's always, sometimes some questions of, well, what are you all doing with the data, and what have you all done, to actually, further the science and, use the contributions that we've provided. And so that's really what this webinar is to do today. And, what we're hoping to do is to do more of these in the future, to really engage with all of you a little bit more, just beyond, with the study visits and things that you get in the mail from us. So we've allotted 1 hour for this webinar, and I will not, be speaking for that entire hour. The way that I've, kind of set this up is I'll have some things that I'll present to all of you and briefly go over, and then I'll open it up for questions and comments and, things like that that we can, hopefully address and, help you get some answers to. I will go ahead and ask that we do all the questions at the end. So as I'm going through the slides, I'll be happy to address any of the questions that you may have once we get through all of them. And again, just a quick reminder that we are going to record this webinar, and we will be sharing it on a YouTube page in which the link for it will be sent out to the entire longevity study participants, in order, if you want to see the video later, or if for those who are unable to attend, they can watch this at a later time. Also, the slides that you'll see will be sent out to all of you as well and shared, so that you'll have those to look at and look over as well. So with that, I will go ahead and start with the presentation that I have for all of us. All right. Angie, is the screen displaying properly?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. All right. So I'll first just go over a bit of the history of the longevity study. So the longevity study itself was initiated in 2007 by Drs. Walter Neary and David Kuhn. And the original intent of putting this study together was to really sort of understand the social, psychological, and emotional factors that contribute to successful aging. One of the nice things about the focus of this study was that a lot of other studies on aging that that go on in this country and in other parts of the world, they focus a lot on sort of the negative aspects of aging. And what we really tried to do, with this, was sort of flip that on its head and really try to understand the positive aspects of aging, and look at the things that help contribute to being healthy and successful in aging. And over the years, the study has evolved quite a bit to include measures of cognitive and physical function. And as you'll see, in some of the later slides, we're going to be moving more in the direction of looking at different blood and brain biomarkers.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, my slides are not advancing. Here we go. Okay. So just before I go on, I just want to introduce the entire longevity study team to everybody. I imagine that a lot of you are familiar with some of the names and people on here, but our principal investigator is Dr. Ali Atri, and our co-investigator is David Kuhn, who is a professor at Arizona State University. Angie Kuramoto, who is our Associate Director of the Observational Cohort Studies, Farah Sheikh, and Deja Gregory, you probably have interacted with quite a bit in the study. Carla Giusti is one of our newest additions to the team, and we're very excited to have her on. Kathy O'Connor, who a lot of you know, has been involved in this study for quite a long time. And then myself, and then our many other, wonderful and amazing volunteers that really make this study work and do a lot of the, main data collection and interviews for this study. And to them, we are extremely thankful for what they are able to contribute to us and make the study go. All right. So the big question that I think a lot of you have always had for a while now, and may have not necessarily gotten a satisfactory answer to, was how is the data from this study used? So after the annual visit is completed and the take-home forms that we send out to you are collected, the data is entered into a secure database that is only accessed by the longevity study staff and the researchers. Now, I will say that the data itself from the longevity study has actually been presented at several different scientific conferences, and I've just listed a few of them here. So some of these are major national and international conferences, that that our scientific findings have been presented at. Now, in addition to those conference proceedings that our data have been shown at, we've also had several peer-reviewed publications that have been generated since 2015, and I'm going to go over those with all of you very briefly to kind of give you a really good idea of the kind of impact that all of you have had with your contributions. So, what are the areas or topics that are currently being studied in the longevity study? So a lot of the, so there's three sort of really big areas that we're starting to focus a lot on. The first one is how subjective memory changes correlate with performance on different cognitive tests and self-reported mood questionnaires. So I imagine that a lot of you always wonder, well, I'm filling out all these forms, answering all these different questions that, some of them are really hard to answer. Well, there's a big reason for doing those things is that when we can make an association between how someone thinks their memory is doing along with how they're actually doing when we give you a set of words to remember, or when we're asking how your mood has been doing. Those things are really helpful in helping us kind of figure out what does what do normal changes in aging look like. And related to that, we've done a lot of work on actually defining what normal performance is on certain cognitive tests. So again, this really goes back to the idea of we don't necessarily want to look at what decline looks like. We want to actually see what normal looks like, and that's something that's really important and very helpful, as you'll see. Another big area that we're starting to touch into as well is this concept that's called cognitive reserve. And that basically refers to one's ability to maintain a high level of cognitive function in the presence of age and disease-related changes in the brain. So really a lot of our focus, for the longevity study is again, we want to kind of figure out and understand, what helps people, stay very active, stay sharp and stay alert, as they get into older ages. So the first paper I will, go over is one of the first publications we did from the longevity study data, where we looked at the association between self-reported sleep duration and performance on a very common cognitive test called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and we'll refer to this as the MoCA throughout here. So if you see a reference to something called the MoCA on the next set of slides, that's basically this Montreal Cognitive Assessment that you're seeing here. So in this paper, we had 189 people from the longevity study who we had data from, and we limited it to those who were 75 and older to really focus on, what are kind of considered the oldest of old. We then divided this sample into 3 groups based on how many hours of sleep they reported getting per night. And that was basically, people who had less than 7, somewhere between 7 and 9, and then 9 or more hours. And interestingly, what we found is that the individuals who reported getting 9 or more hours of sleep had significantly lower cognitive test scores, even after we adjust for things like age and sex. So this actually finding has been replicated and found in other similar studies. And so one of the things that is sort of being investigated further is, why is it that, getting more sleep, sometimes, in this case leads to, lower test performance. So something that's still being teased out with other studies, but certainly, this is something that we were able to contribute with as well. So the next paper that we were able to publish, so this again speaks to the idea that we are trying to understand what normal aging looks like and what normal performance looks like on different cognitive tests. So this paper that came out in 2015, basically what it did was it created a set of what we call normative data for the MoCA. And in particular, it addressed a big gap that was there in among published papers, was that we did not have normative data for individuals who were from age 70 to older. And that's what we were able to do with this data. So the reason why it was important to have this paper is that because right now the MoCA is the most commonly used cognitive screening tool. And this study provides updated normative data for clinicians to use in determining the cognitive status of older adults who are in that age range from 70 to 99. Now, since its publication in 2015, this is where the real impact has been, is that this paper has been cited by 122 other published articles. So the impact that you all are having with what you provide to us on a yearly basis can be seen very clearly right here by the fact that this paper that your data contributed to has been cited by 122 other published articles. So the next one I'll talk about is a paper that was actually led by 2 of our former student interns, and they looked at the relationship between cognitive function, physical activity, and depression status. And so what we found was that increased physical activity was significantly associated with better self-reported mood. And what we also found interestingly was that the combination of better cognition and increased physical activity was also associated with better self-reported mood. And what was really important about this is that we found that cognitive function seems to mediate or be a big part of this relationship between physical activity and mood. And this actually supports a lot of previous research, indicating that physical and mental activity are both associated with better mood. And again, I just want to point out that, this study was led by our interns in the summer of 2014, Kelly Birch and Merritt Tenhope, both of whom have since gone on to do really great things. I believe that Merritt has gone on to medical school, and Kelly received her master's in public health a few years ago, and is currently working in the area of mental health and substance abuse. So the next paper that we also did, we also, again, looking at, what normal is on the MoCA, we wanted to see, what does it look like over time? And, we also know that people, vary in their performance from year to year in these cognitive tests. So we really wanted to get an idea of, well, what's the normal sort of, variability or, margin of error, if you will, for the MoCA in this group. So for this one, we were able to get data from 467 participants from all of you. And, what was really great about this and what allowed us to do this study was the fact that we had, a lot of good follow-up from the people in this study. So, anytime we can get, more years, that really makes our science and our study much more robust. So when we looked at individuals who are in the age span of 60 to 99, what we found was that the MoCA declines in what we see is,
the most
I'm
important
sorry.
factors to carefully operationalizing and planning your research to start with, making sure you have enough data to be confident.
Okay, sorry.
I can't do it.
Okay, let's be sure all of our microphones are muted, please. So across the age span of 60 to 99, what we found was that the MoCA declines about 1 point every 2 years for individuals. So this is not sort of hard and fast rule, but this was what we found generally from the larger group. Now, what we also found was that year-to-year performance on the MoCA can vary by as much as 4 points, give or take. So that's really important because when we're trying to figure out, how much of a change on the MoCA, is clinically significant, it's important for us to know that, there's a certain margin of error that, people can be normally within. Right, and then the last one that I'll go over is also one that was very, still in the same vein of looking at the MoCA, but what we tried to do was we, tried to see how well it correlated and how well it translates to other cognitive tests. And this particular study was also a collaboration that we did with researchers at the University of California, Irvine, who also have their own version of the longevity study. They have what's called the 90 plus study. But for this one, so prior to the MoCA, a test called the Mini Mental State Exam was the most commonly used cognitive screening instrument. But more and more now, as I mentioned, the MoCA is now the most commonly used one. But we still see the MMSE being used every now and then. And since the two tests are, very different in, how they're structured, you can't make a direct comparison of one to the other. So, a 25 on the MoCA is not necessarily the same as a 25 on the Mini Mental. So what this study did was basically try to determine how equivalent these two tests are so that we can properly translate, from one test to the other. And this study has also been cited quite a bit and was really important because it represented, one of the first really big collaborations that we did outside of Arizona. So what's next for the longevity study? So as a lot of you know, we've been starting to take blood samples, and what we eventually will be doing with these is validating new biomarkers. And so one of the important things that we have to have when new biomarkers of aging and other things are developed is that we have to have some sort of reference or some sort of normative reference to have. And that's what we hope to get by having the blood samples that we take each year. There's also the possibility that in the future that we will add some brain imaging for those who are able and willing to do so. Certainly, there are certain health restrictions for doing those, and certainly there might be other things that prevent somebody from having an MRI done. But if we're able to obtain the funding to do that, that is something that we would very much like to do in the future, because it would certainly make our study much more robust and much more rich in what we're able to do. What we're also going to really do a lot of more is we're going to continue to collaborate with other aging researchers by sharing de-identified data. So one of our current collaborations is with Dr. Sydney Schaefer at Arizona State, and where we have implemented her motor task into the study. And I know some of you may have actually gotten to do this already. So this is a task where you take a spoon and move coffee beans in different cups with your non-dominant hand. And so one of the things that Dr. Schaefer is looking at is to see, whether this motor task can also be predictive of, cognitive functioning and functional change in aging. In addition to that, we've also begun a collaboration with researchers at New Mexico State University with Dr. Andrew Conway and his PhD student, Casey Bauer, who Casey was an intern with us here at Banner Alzheimer's Institute several years ago. She's doing her PhD there. And we're going to be implementing a computer-based test that will be administered to a limited number of people in the study. But that's something that we are, really excited about and are anxious to get going here pretty soon. And then finally, we are also actively submitting grants to get federal funding to support the longevity study. What I've shown here are just two of the different grants that we will be putting in applications for. This first one, where we're looking at the analyses of existing cohorts and data sets. This grant was submitted last month and is going to be reviewed early in the 2024, and so hopefully in the spring of 2024 we'll get some good news, and hopefully this one will be funded. This second grant that we're putting in for, we're in the process of finalizing right now, and we will be submitting that in the early part of 2024 with the hopes of it being funded and getting to start that in either the summer or fall of 2024. All right, so with that, that was just what I wanted to go through with all of you, and I'm very happy to take any questions or comments you all might have. Let me look in the chat first to see what questions we have. So the first one, am I underaged out? I started at age 64. No, we have individuals who have actually started in their 50s, and that was answered here by Kathy. So thank you, Kathy, for that.
I can't find it.
Let's see.
I can't find it.
All right. All right. So that question we can answer offline. Are there any? So if anybody is curious and wants to unmute yourself to ask a question, I'm very happy to take any of those if you would like to.
Hello, this is Rosemary Abrami. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I've been in the longevity study for many years. I've also been in the brain and body study for some years, fewer. I guess there is some sort of connection, but I never worked out exactly what it is. And I was interested to see your slide where you said, I'm going to turn on my face. I was interested to see your slide where you mentioned about the MRIs and so on and so forth. I've been having those things down at Banner Neurological. I've done there a couple of times, but that's with the brain and body. Is there any connection?
So really the only connection is that we are Banner sponsored.
Yeah.
The studies themselves, although we do have individuals like yourself who are enrolled in both the brain and body donation program and the longevity study, they are distinct and separate from each other. So, one thing that, we are going to, consider is that, if we do are able to implement MRIs with the longevity study, whether we can leverage, those already, taken from the brain and body donation program in order to avoid having, duplicate MRIs and having people, go through a separate visit if that's not necessarily needed. So, I know that's sort of a long-winded answer to your question, but
just exactly what I wanted to know. There basically is no exact connection. The fact that we go to the same building is just a confusion in our lives.
Yes, yeah. So I know that, and over the years, I know the buildings have sort of changed in which studies are housed and where. But yeah, so they the studies are very different. They have different sort of goals, if you will. And, really one of the things with the longevity study was that, we wanted to just, again, look more at, what are the positive aspects of aging and what contributes to successful aging. And it's a little bit more narrow focus than brain and body donation.
May I ask another question?
Yes.
On one of your slides, that whole thing about the amount of sleep you have and what effect it has on cognitive ability. You read information everywhere about how you've got to get enough sleep to avoid catching Alzheimer's, for Alzheimer's to develop, they emphasize getting enough sleep. And it's long been a joke with my doctor that I don't sleep enough. And it looks to me as if you think I'm sleeping perfectly adequately. Where
Well,
does the connection come from?
So really, kind of what the general consensus is that there's sort of a Goldilocks range of sleep.
Mhm.
So not too much, but not too little. So the current recommendations, as I understand them to be, are somewhere between 7 and 9 hours per night.
I've got stacks of other questions, but I'll wait to give other people a turn.
All right, let me check in the chat here. I know there's a couple that has come up. All right, so we reported so this is for Nancy's question. We reported results regarding sleep. Are there any other findings you can report on? Outside of what I showed in the slides, those are what we have published so far. Certainly we are working on, getting more papers out there and having more findings published, but it's it's oftentimes it's easier said than done. So certainly, but we will, when we do publish other papers and have other findings, those are things that we do try to communicate in our newsletter. And certainly, once we find a good sort of time frame in which we can hold these kind of webinars, we would be able to update all of you, in a forum like this as well. The next question is, can we discuss the relationship, if any, between All of Us, Trial Match, Gene Match? So I can say that we are not affiliated with any of those programs. They are done, again, independently of what we do. And part of what we do, yes, with our blood draws is we do genotyping for the ApoE gene, which we know is a gene that certainly is associated with an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease in certain forms. But we also know that certain forms of it are protective or seem to reduce one's risk for Alzheimer's disease. So yes, that is something that we do capture with the blood draws. But we have not, right now we have not been able to sort of utilize that data for anything that we've done so far. But that is something that we do plan on using in the future.
I may ask another question. I know that for a long time there's been discussion that many of these research programs, not only this one, not only the Banana Body, seem to be predominantly populated by elderly ladies, elderly Caucasian ladies.
Mm-hmm.
What is being done? What can be done to expand the field that is being investigated?
So, Rosemary, I'm glad you brought that up. So it's so it is a very unfortunate symptom of research, I'll call it, that unfortunately higher socioeconomic white educated individuals are highly overrepresented in the published medical research. I can tell you that on many different ends, there are significant efforts being done to remedy that. Certainly here in Arizona, we have large resources put toward enrolling Latino and Hispanic individuals, as well as our Native American individuals. Not to say that we are excluding other ethnic groups. We are certainly not. One thing that we just have to be mindful of is that, within Arizona, we have a very, unfortunately, a very, distinct ethnographic profile, if you will, which, limits us quite a bit in what we're able to do in terms of being ethnically diverse in enrolling for our studies. But, that being said, we welcome any and all individuals, regardless of their ethnicity, to be in the study. And certainly with more resources, we might be able to address that a little bit more easily. But, those resources are often very limited. So by virtue of that, it limits us in what we're able to do in that regard. But certainly, you do bring up a very valid point, and something that at least there we're doing our best to address it with the available things that we have.
At least you're trying. Interesting question.
All right. All right. So one question we have from the chat: if someone is found to be at increased risk for dementia, is there anything that can be done to avoid or at least delay the onset? So certainly we know there are, certain risk factors, for Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. One of the, one of the big mantras that we've been saying for, a while now is that, if you're doing the things to prevent heart attack and stroke, you're likely doing the same things to prevent Alzheimer's disease. So, anything to reduce your cardiovascular risk, reducing risk for type 2 diabetes, the Mediterranean diet, those things have all, shown to be, relatively beneficial in terms of reducing one's risk. And what outreach has been made by the longevity study to include African Americans? Excellent question, Deborah. I wish I had a more direct and concrete answer for you. Unfortunately, I do not. One thing that that we do have, and that we have been trying to do for a while, is our team, our family and community services team that we have both at Banner Alzheimer's Institute and Banner Sun Health Research Institute. They have taken a lead on on those sort of recruitment efforts in the African American community. Just for the longevity study, again, it's a little bit more difficult for us. We are a little bit more constrained by the resources that we do have, and that's one of the big reasons why we're trying to obtain these different research grants. This would allow us to use the resources we currently have and possibly redirect them towards other efforts to help enroll African Americans and other underrepresented individuals.
Hi, this is Serena. Hi, Michael, Dr. Michael. Yes, and I also work with Michael at Banner Sun Health Research Institute, and I'm the Alzheimer's Equity Navigator. So what we're doing to get more diversity in our studies, we're doing a lot of educational outreach in African American communities, in Hispanic communities, to make sure that they know what we offer here at Banner Sun Health, such as the longevity study, and providing information, tangible information for them to read over, to get interested. I think the main thing is getting out there in the communities, and that's one of my main jobs.
Who was that was just speaking?
My name is Serena Laurie.
Serena, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that possibly, I'm sure you thought of it, part of the problem is the time that it takes to get involved in this. When you were talking about higher education, higher socioeconomic, and so on and so forth, I imagine that most of us here are retired or semi-retired or working from home or whatever. And here I'm actually talking about my brain and body bit, but I've just completed my 4 sessions. It took quite a lot of time. You've got to have the time, and you've also got to have the transport to get there.
Mm-hmm.
To do a thing, and that is also a factor in perhaps precluding some people.
Yeah, it certainly does. Again, it's hard because most of sort of the research centers that do this kind of work, tend to be located in more urban type of areas. One of the one of the benefits of, of where Banner Sun Health Research Institute is located, being it in Sun City, it's a little bit closer to, some of the areas where we, draw our recruitment from. But still, even those who, do not have, their own transportation or reliable transportation, it certainly does, create a roadblock in that regard, because as, most of us know by now, Phoenix and the greater Phoenix area is not necessarily a walking friendly area. So, and certainly public transportation is lacking in some areas. But I see that Angie is responding in here that we actually do provide transportation if needed, and she's provided a phone number that can be called to obtain transportation. So there is that there and available.
No, thank goodness I haven't needed, but it's nice to know it's there if I do.
And one thing that we also offer, and I see Lois's comment here, that in some cases we do our visits through by telephone, and we are attempting to transition to be able to do them via Zoom and other virtual platforms. So we haven't quite pinned that down yet, but I know that that's been in the works for a little while now, and hopefully will be available to us very soon to do, which will be very helpful.
This has been very interesting indeed.
Glad to hear it. All right. Any other questions or comments? So as I mentioned, the recording of this webinar will be available on YouTube, and the link to that will be sent out to everybody in case you want to look at it again later. But I just personally, for me, as a researcher working on this study, I just want to express my most sincere gratitude and thanks to all of you for your contributions, your volunteering, and coming and being a participant in this study. Hopefully, from what I've shown you today, you've seen, real fruitful, products from the efforts and the time that you have given to us. And I really want to convey, just my really sincere thanks as a scientist to all of you for the time and effort that you have given and will continue to give to us in the future. As I said, we will try to, make this a more of a regular thing where, we give more regular, in-person updates like this, and you have the chance to interact with us and talk with us about, what's going on with longevity studies. So much appreciation to all of you. And, certainly if you have any, questions after this, you can feel free to contact the research study staff or send them an email. And, again, stay in touch with us if you have any questions. And certainly you can always ask when you come in for your yearly visit or when you do your visit over the phone. But thank you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a very good Thanksgiving.
Thank you.